What is up, people of YouTube? I'm your host Vernon, and this is Finally Fishing. Alright guys, this is going to be my third little Q&A session where I answer some questions sent in to me by you guys, my viewers. So let's get into some questions. I have known you from a young age. You always seemed so shy. Now you have a YouTube channel. What happened? What happened indeed? First off, knowing me from a young age, you are probably a friend or family or something like that. I would like to ask you to please contact me, as I would love to give you some IT support, because that email address of yours, that's really a bad email address. So please do contact me for that. However, to answer your question, yes, I am quite a shy person. I am more introverted. I find it hard to sometimes talk to strangers. The more I get used to people, the more I tend to open up to them, the easier it gets. However, I do struggle with talking to new people. As far as YouTube is concerned, talking to a camera, one would think that's a bit easier, but again, it's not. I don't think I will ever get used to the idea of talking to a camera. It's a weird thing to do, but hopefully I can get better at it. But this is also why I do quite usually ask you guys, if you see me out there, to come and have a chat with me. I think the more I talk to people, the more I get used to talking to new people, the more it helps me. And this is one way you guys can help me out by getting over this kind of fear of talking to strange people, is by talking to strange people. And that's why I always ask you guys to help me out with that. Alright, so next question. Were you fishing back in your hometown? And if so, was it better than here in Vegas? Alright, Mr. Low-Key. First off, they always say home is where the heart is. Currently, my heart is here in Vegas. But I get what you're saying. My hometown, that would be Pretoria. It is the capital city of South Africa. We do have quite a lot of good fishing in South Africa. For instance, in Pretoria, we have lots of dams. That's what we call them in South Africa. You guys would refer to them as lakes, but we call them dams. We have lots of dams around Pretoria, a lot of big ones. We have some rivers, some creeks, a lot of private owned properties, private little dams and stuff like that. Lots of good fishing. We, of course, have different types of fish as well. We do have bass that's been introduced. Some places do have stock trout, but we do have carp, tilapia, stuff like that. But we have some different native fish species than you guys do have. Carp fishing in South Africa is rather big. We have a more, I would say, technical view on carp fishing, whereas you guys just chum the waters with corn. What we tend to do is we have flavored corn. We break the dams up into different flavors. For instance, are they sweet, or do they prefer savory flavors, or is it a fruity dam, stuff like that. It's a lot more technical. We also don't just use corn. We have lots of different baits we try to use to catch carp. Our carp also, I think, on average tend to be a lot bigger than the carp you guys have here. I don't know if it's because we feed them more that they grow bigger or something like that, but it's a lot more technical fishing for basic stuff like that. Our fisheries, however, is not as pressured as they are here in America. There are certain ponds and lakes where if you're trying to catch bass, you end up catching a bass that has never in its life before seen a lure. They are not shy. They will go for pretty much anything that moves. There are places like that. So we do have lots of good fishing in South Africa. However, you need to kind of understand that South Africa is like Detroit. You have lots of good things about it, but they also do have problems with poverty. And where you have poverty, you tend to have problems with crime as well. Same thing for South Africa. A lot of the places you do get stuff like armed robberies on fishermen. They do have quite a high streak of violent crimes and stuff like that. So it's not always safe to go to public places to go fish. Therefore, you tend to get places where you need to pay entrance fees to get extra security and stuff like that, which again makes the sport of fishing a lot more expensive, meaning that the average guy on the street cannot necessarily participate in fishing, as you kind of need money to kind of be safe to go fishing. So if I have to compare that to here in Las Vegas, I have to say it's quite different to, you can go to any place and not be that worried about your safety. I like that idea. And I have to give it to you guys, places like Sunset Park, Lorenzi Park, the idea of having a public space, a public park with a pond that gets stocked and anyone from anywhere can go there and go fish that body of water. That to me is a great idea. So when you say, is it better in my hometown or here in Vegas? I don't think we can go for better. It's too different to compare. But yet again, I like fishing, so no matter where I am, I will probably go fishing. I think the best place to fish is the body of water in front of you. Kind of fish the moment and think about what you're doing rather than wondering about some other place. All right, so next question. Great video. I always learn something when I watch you. Thank you. What is your overall opinion of fishing Lake Mead, as well as southern Nevada as a whole? I've heard on other video channels that say it can be quite difficult and extremely challenging, even for seasoned fishermen. I am still new at fishing here, but I've had success fishing from the shore. Thanks. Good question there, Coco. For starters, from you commenting on some of my videos and stuff, I do know that you have caught quite a few fish. Never downplay the fish that you have caught. Always be proud of what you have achieved. To answer your question, let's start off with southern Nevada as a whole. I actually think fishing here in southern Nevada is a lot better than I initially thought. For instance, I thought that during the winter months, there's not going to be a lot happening. Fishing is going to die down. I was completely wrong with this. We have an open trout season year round, so trout fishing in the winter time works well, as well as little stripers. They seem to be a lot more active during the winter times. You get a lot better bites during the winter. So there's a lot of fishing going on in southern Nevada that I was not expecting, which is good. Also, the ponds and lakes, they don't freeze over. Of course, doing ice fishing opens your waters up to new fish species, something like northern pike and stuff like that, which of course you don't find here in southern Nevada. However, having good season year-round where you can do fishing is, I think, a lot better to have an entire year of fishing rather than having months where you cannot go fishing. All right, as far as Lake Mead is concerned, you kind of need to understand that there are certain things you can do to improve your chances in any body of water. For instance, if you're a multi-species fisherman, targeting a wider range of fish, you're going to get a lot better success than being a specific fisherman. So that's something to keep in mind, as well as understanding the fish's behavior and knowing whether they are in feeding mode or they are in breeding mode or in a hibernation mode. That can also improve your chances. But you do get places where the fishing seems a lot tougher than it is in some other places. Is Lake Mead one of these places? I personally think yes. Lake Mead is a difficult lake to fish. To kind of give you a better idea, that's not just my own opinion. Back in 2019, I don't quite remember what series of bass fishing tournament there was, but there was a bass fishing tournament here at Lake Mead where you have groups of pros and novice fishermen, and they kind of mix the groups together through a couple of days. send these people out to go catch fish. The tournament did quite well. People caught lots of fish. But once you start crunching the numbers and actually looking at the stats, you will see that lots of these people didn't get the bag limits. I think the average, very important, the average size of the fish that were caught were just below 2 pounds. So Lake Mead has big fish, but the average size that was caught is below 2 pounds. That kind of gives you an idea how hard it was for these seasoned fishermen as well as the pros to come here to Lake Mead and try and catch fish. Now, to kind of explain to you why Lake Mead is so difficult to fish, okay, so I'm not a scientist. It's going to be difficult to kind of prove the things that I want to tell you about why I think Lake Mead is a difficult lake to fish. But to do so, I quickly want to show you some photos. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice about Lake Mead, I don't have a scale here, unfortunately, to show you, but it is quite a large lake. We don't have lots of structure here on Lake Mead. What I mean by that, if we look at this little arm we have here, compared to some of the other features on the lake, it's quite smooth. You have a few of these indentations, but it's rather smooth all around. On the other side as well, it's these smooth, flat edges. We have a few little inlets here as well, little arms and stuff. But Lake Mead as a whole is actually quite devoid of lots of good features and structures like points and arms and creeks and stuff like that. The lake does, however, have 3 little inlets that is quite important. All right, so we do have the Colorado River coming in on this side. It creates a nice little feeding area on this side, as well as at the top part. I don't know why they show St. Thomas rather than showing Overton, but here on the Overton side we do have the White River coming in from up north, bringing in nutrients and food, also creating a good feeding zone here to the north, as well as we do have from Las Vegas coming in here into the Las Vegas Bay area. You get the runoff from the city coming into this little bay area here. That also creates a feeding area on this side. So we do have these 3 good feeding areas on the lake, as well as some really deep areas in the lake, and these little narrow channels here where we have large drop-offs or steep cliffs, also a good place for fish to be hiding. And then the entire Overton Arm is actually a pretty decent place to fish. It is a lot different from the rest of Lake Mead. It also has a lot more structure and stuff like that. Lots of fish in this area. That is why in tournaments and stuff, the people will tend to go from the greater Lake Mead area and go through to these areas to go and do some fishing. Alright, so there are some good areas in Lake Mead. For instance, here we have Swallow Bay. I wanted to show you guys this because this is actually a good portion of Lake Mead where you have lots of good points and secondary points, as well as lots of these little arms heading back into little shallow parts and stuff like that. A pretty good area to do some fishing. You'll find people with boats coming to this area. However, being a bank angler with the mountains all around, places like this will be hard to reach. A bank angler would more likely be coming to this side, going down this little road, ending up in this bay, and you can see that this bay is a lot more devoid of good structure, a lot less points, a lot less arms in this little bay than we have in the one right next to that. Alright, and then I quickly wanted to show you guys a little map of Boxcar Cove. This is actually an area where you have access all the way to the water. Boxcar Cove, however, is a pretty good place for spawning, for instance for bass for spawning. You have access from the deep water onto these little points. From the points, as the water heats up, they will go to, the bass will move to secondary points, and then as the water reaches the right temperatures, they will move onto these little flats for spawning. You will quite easily see some beds in these areas where you can actually see the bass on the beds, a good spawning place for the fish. But this brings me to another reason why it's hard to fish in Lake Mead. From mid of May onwards to about August, this entire bay here changes completely in that the grass starts growing in this little shallow part, and it actually covers this entire cove in grass. Now, if you have something like a canoe or paddle ski and you go out to the edge of this grass, you can actually find some good fishing, as the fish do use the grass for cover. So on the fishing on the edge of that grass, you can get these fish to commit to your lures and stuff like that. But as a bank angler, you are not going to be able to reach that, and it does increase the difficulty in fishing areas like this because of natural underwater grass growing in Lake Mead. Next, I wanted to show you guys aerial footage of Upper Government Wash. You'll notice here in the corner this murkiness in the water. That is actually where the water runs in from Las Vegas, creating again a feeding zone, meaning this is quite a popular place for people to fish, as this is a feeding zone. But looking at the cove in general, it is quite devoid of structure. If there were large patches of rocks or anything, this would be an excellent place to fish, but it is rather dull looking. People will of course say, but if you look here at the top, we have lots of submerged brush. If you can fish this open little part here, you might get the bass that's hiding in this brush to react. You are of course correct, it is a good place to do some bass fishing. You'll oftentimes see boats and stuff in this area trying for that reason. But this does give me an opportunity to explain to you yet another reason why it's difficult to fish in Lake Mead. So this aerial photograph was taken during March 2020. However, if you go back to about August, you will find that this little open patch here between the brush, that is actually a road. During August, you can actually drive from this side all the way to this side. That is why these brushes and bushes are actually there, because for a large portion of the year they are actually not underwater, they are actually above the water line. So there is a big rise and fall in water levels here in Lake Mead, and that causes places where you think is a good fishing spot for one time of the year to completely disappear in the next. And this also has an effect on fish. The rise and fall of the waters, fish aren't necessarily going to be hanging around in these areas if they know that the water is going to recede. It puts more stress on the fish. If you find a good fishing spot or a honey hole, that spot might not last as long as you think. With all these changes, especially in the water level, these holes can very quickly run dry and the fish move on to other places. Alright, so these are some of the reasons why I think Lake Mead is quite a difficult lake to fish. If you look at the stats and you compare it to some of the different lakes out there in America, Lake Mead really is a difficult lake to fish. There are certain patterns that do work, but they change just as quick as that as well. But whether it is changing weather patterns, fluctuating water levels, natural fauna and flora cycles, the way the fish behave, a lack of structure in the lake, places for the fish to hide, or the fact that there's a high amount of fishing pressure on the lake, all these little factors makes Lake Mead quite a difficult place to fish. However, I think that if it was very easy to always just go catch fish, we would quite quickly get bored of it. So having a bit of a challenge to fishing makes it much more sporty and much more exciting to go and do some fishing. Alright guys, I think that's going to be it for this video. Quite interesting questions you guys sent me through. If you have any other questions, please don't be afraid to ask. You can always send an email, or you can ask your questions down in the comments if you want me to give my opinions or my answers on these questions. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.